So I am Camilla Bullock. I am the CEO of the Emerging Payments Association Asia, EPAA. We are the leading branch organizations for the payments industry in APAC. I think we're going to start to drop the words digital and emerging, and we're just going to talk about payments. I think we're going to see escalation of offerings within the embedded payments and embedded finance space, that customers are really going to increase their expectation of being connected and have a frictionless experience. I also think that we're going to see more in the space of loyalty and reward schemes. There is so rich data within those payments. I think we're going to see a tend to mine this data, both in point of sale and really to offer more value around the context and friction there. And that could be not just for that individual customer, but also for the merchant. So real-time payments is really creating liquidity in the financial system. So I see it is as a catalyst for economic growth. So we will be more connected in the world and within countries. We'll see cost savings and innovation on the top of this. It's really important if we look at the digital economy and the gig economy, for those people to be paid faster, because it enables them to manage their finances better, as well as it does for corporates to be able to manage their cash flow. I also think that in the space of real-time payments, we're going to see the industry starting to apply this not just to the low-value transactions, but also to high-value transactions, to really push it up the value chain. And we're going to start to see it being applied to cross-border payments. Automation, I think there is so much more to be done here actually, especially if we're just looking at those core of corporates of account payables and accounts receivables. We see so much manual intervention still, and as we know, manual intervention could be human errors, and as well the human factor is the biggest risk within cybersecurity. We've seen automation done so much for risk assessment of customers and KYC to really speed up that process. I think now we're going to see it being applied more in combination with AI in cloud to do fraud prevention. And also we have the increase of uses of ISO 20022 messaging, where we have, as I mentioned before, richer data, which means that SDP and automation will be possible. So this is really at the core of what we're working with in the Emerging Payments Association Asia, and there's so much possibility within them. We have a vision of that cross-border payments should be as easy as making an international phone call. And if we look back, that wasn't that easy just 10, 15 years ago. I never thought I could call my family in Sweden over WhatsApp on a video call. So that is where we're going, but there is a lot of hurdle to get over before we get there. So number one, policymakers really need to trust that this will be a collaboration between public and private sector, that we need to collaborate to move on this. And traditionally, when we're looking how government bodies has been working, they've really been consulting the banks and their service providers. By the ecosystem is so much bigger now. We see big tech, paytech, fintechs, all sort of players coming together to solve cross-border payments. So they really need to be consulted and have a voice in the conversation and express where they see innovations going. So with that in mind, those global bodies, regulators, central banks really need to consider who they're talking to when they're doing regulation initiatives or infrastructure, or what infrastructure they are supporting. So secondly, regulators and policymakers really need to look at their regulations so it doesn't prohibit innovation and competition, especially if we're looking at the field of AML and sanction. Those are areas where it's really hard to get it right. So we need to collaborate and talk around this, and as well to mutually agree on how we can acknowledge different license frameworks across the regions. It's also really important that those regulators or government bodies are clear on where they're going and how they're developing their payments infrastructure. And thirdly, infrastructure. So central banks are often the providers of the infrastructure, and they sort of decide of who has access and not access. And access is a very important word here. Traditionally, it's been mainly banks that have access to this settlement system and payment system, but it is opening up, and we're seeing a lot of promising movements here. We're seeing bilateral agreements like the one between Singapore and Thailand, or Singapore and Indonesia. So we're expecting to see more of those things, but bilateral agreements, we're going to need a lot of them if we're going to create frictionless cross-border payments. So maybe we should more go towards a federated model. It's really exciting, the things that BIS and Nexus is doing, and talking about that bilateral platform. You can look at what they've done in Africa with MFS Africa, or in the Nordics with P27, where we really hook up several real-time payments networks. But access is so important. So whoever is financing and governing systems like this is need to be open for all. But when I say open for all, I don't mean open for all just like that, but it needs to be clear what are the rules to get access and to play in this system. And it might be that we'll see a cross-border economic network, that is network of networks that are connected through to protocol and standards that you need certain requirements. So in short, I've been saying a few things on this topic as it really excites me, and I think there is lots of opportunity in it, but it's really is access both to the infrastructure and also to the conversation, so all players can have a view of where we're going, and it is collaboration. So we talked a little bit about this, and it is really to not lock up liquidity in the system. So if we're looking at what we talked about, the importance of being paid fast for the gig economy, we're looking at corporates to manage their cash flow, but it's also proving that it's less failed payments in a real-time payment system. Looking also going to real-time payments, the cost of Junis is changing, and most of the times that goes down. But the biggest opportunities is to involve also the shadow economy and not to lose that, because that is a cost to society. So we see that going to real-time payments is enabling those underbanked or unbanked to be part of the economy and all the gains that comes from that. It's a great opportunity to meet like-minded with the vision of enhancing payments and financial inclusion in general, the ecosystem. But it's also an opportunity to be challenged of what I believe and what I've set out to do. I think it's very important that we meet other people that has different views, so that we actually can extend our own understanding.